Falls Historical Society. Thank you so much for supporting us in this endeavor. As you know, Tracy, she is our fearless leader, and she gave us our marching orders 2 years ago to reinvent the Historical Society. So we have done that in a couple of ways. Top down at the museum, from roof to walls to floor, it's been totally remade, and it is beautiful. We've done the entire insides, and everything that has gone back into the museum has gone back in a way that can make you proud of your museum. It's the nicest museum of any in New England, and we're really proud. Work in progress. Thank you, Tracy. Reworking the museum and remaking that is we needed to remake ourselves, to bring ourselves into the modern age. And so we sat around the table as a board and wondered what we were going to do during this week of celebration. So half the table said, when you have a party, when you have a celebration, you really need wine. And the other guy at the table said, when you have a celebration, you really need beer. So,
and they're both correct.
Yeah. For once, both sides are on the right camp. So Friday night we have Marianne Esposito of the cooking show Chow coming to give us a wine tasting. And tonight we have a focus on beer. Now, since we're a historical society, we decided we had better be somewhat historical about beer. So we were very fortunate that in the neighborhood we have one of the preeminent beer historians in New England. And tonight, as a way of cheering, feel free to give a huzzah. So let's give a rowdy huzzah to our historian, Mark Shea. Hip, hip. Beer. We came up with our historian, Mark. The only thing missing from the picture was beer. So we decided we would look for one of the top brewmasters in New England. And we were fortunate that right in Exeter, New Hampshire on Center Street is the Czars Brewery. And the brewmaster there is Henry Hankovich. He has a wonderful community that he has established. So we piled in the car, we drove into the Czars, we sat down with Henry and we said, we're having this wonderful celebration of beer. Could you give us flights? For those of you who are not familiar, when you go to a brewery, you get a flight, which is a collection of samples of beer. Henry, could you give us flights of beer from the 1700s, beers from the 1800s, and so forth? And he said, no. I can do better than that. I can do 1700s, I can do 1800s, and then, just for you, exclusively, I can make a Hampton Falls 300th anniversary brew. And you can uncast it the night of your event. So I'm very happy to present to you the king of the keg, the Sultan of Suds. Let's give a rousing huzzah for Czar Henry. So we're going to turn over the evening to these two fine gentlemen. And what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 pours. So our first pour, Mark is going to give us a history of beer drinking in the 1700s. You know, you couldn't drink the water 300 years ago. So you had 3 choices. You had hot tea, you had apple cider, and you had beer. So a lot of what Mark tells you about is because beer was the preferred drink along with hot tea and cider, water not so much. So Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you for starters. Please welcome Mark and Czar.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to kind of be quick and
fun, more than the rule behind today. Some beer stories of New Hampshire. But we first have to start down Massachusetts. Right at the beginning of the Pilgrims, right? We're going to talk about beer. The Pilgrims arrived in 1620 down Plymouth. Started to set up shop. The very first Native American that came walking into a little village shortly after they arrived, walked straight up to them, and the first word they heard him speak in perfectly clear English was, "May I please have a beer?" Not making this up, you can look at yourself. And I didn't have this up. We had a Breakfast brother who had been across the ocean several times. He learned plain English and French, for that matter, mastered the languages. And he came back and taught Samuel said English, and the first thing I ever found, "May I please have a beer?" Of course, the answer to them was, "I'm sorry, we're all out of beer." But we do have some brandy. Would you like to come in? Okay, we tell you tell them brand of beer before they drink brandy. As for New Hampshire, the first ship arrived here in 1623. Don't look at this down in the blizzard end of this, but the first wave of settlers that arrived here, it came a few years later in 1630. In 1642, only 12 years later, you think about it, that there's not a whole lot of people here at the time, but they had a tavern in downtown Portsmouth. They went and built themselves a bar. Our ancestors, they had their priorities straight. They knew just what they were doing. They built a tavern with water and hole for those that come and have beer. That tavern was called Sherwin's, and it stood more or less where Prescott Park is today. It's long gone, unfortunately. No trace of it exists. The taverns in the old days, of course, were a place you could go and get a beer, you get a hot meal, and a bed to sleep as you would try. What you couldn't do back then was walk into a tavern and say, "Let me have a beer." Mugs, they cost money back then. You had to bring them over with you. But then you know what, Jeopardy? I was not watching a while back. The question came up. And they said, what did the colonists in early America call the vessel, they called it, the mug, that they would bring with them from the cabin to get a beer? The woman answered the question, and she got it wrong when she said stein, but she was on the right track. That's what they called them to do. Here in America, we call them tankards, okay? The big mug made out of wood or pewter, if you had yourself a nice one. And you never let go of that, all right? You walk in the tavern, you fill it up, drink it, and move on to the next place. However, if you want hard alcohol, rum, or later when whiskey became popular, they serve that to you in a bowl, huh? A wooden bowl filled with straight hard alcohol. The idea was you were supposed to share with everybody at the table, whether you knew them or not. This was put up, of course. You would pass your bowl of rum back and forth and sit out while you enjoyed your meal. We'll get back in a little bit. I look about the revolution and the beer. And with Washington and beer, all here in New Hampshire, but I know you're thirsty. We're going to go to Czars. We're over here for our first day.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Henry. All right. So what we're serving right now, we're going to serve 3 beers tonight. The first one is an traditional English pale ale, which is brewed in traditional fashion. The English pale ale actually enters the historical record about the same time as this town was founded. So the timing is pretty great. It was 1710 or so when it was the historical record. So what you should experience is fairly light beer, which balance a little bit of maltiness and a little bit of citrus. Citrus comes from both the yeast and hops. Hopefully you will all have the same. So secondly, the second beer we're going to try is it's referred to as an extra special beer, which actually predates the pale ale. It comes from around 1600 for the original beer. And then later, there were different forms that were made, stronger beer, and 50 years ago, a brewery named Fuller decided one day to create a style called an ESB, which went on to be an old time world champion. So hopefully you like that. And then finally, we will uncast the Tricentennial Porter, which is mock-up of a recipe with Robert Harry used around the time of the Revolution. It was actually the most popular beer sold in America. John Adams has recited it in letters when he was alive. George Washington stopped it at his Mount Vernon estate, and Thomas Jefferson actually talked about it. So it was a very highly thought of beer. There is no actual recipe because the brewery burned down in 1790. Fortunately, after Robert Harrigan, both were money, so it was fine. But the recipe didn't survive. But what we do have is descriptions written by people at the time, as well as recipes that were made by people who were trying to substitute their beer for beer that they were around. So we have a good idea of what they had. And what we did is we took modern techniques and modern ingredients and made what we think will appeal to your taste, but yet still be true to the original recipe. So hopefully those will come around now.
Now, can you raise your hand if you haven't had your first pour yet, so our servers can find you?
Anybody else? Raise your hand.
Is anyone else here? You can put your hand up if you heard it happen. Make me feel they're already different. So what you'll get here in this first year is fairly light. The reason it was light, and the reason it was really earth-shattering for English experience at the time is that right around in the break of the 18th century, early in the 1700s, a new fuel was developed. It was coke, which is different from what we think of, but it's a coal that burns. They could control the burn a lot better. And what happened was they could start to kill malt in a way that the malt would actually taste like grain as opposed to the fuel source. Up until then, what had happened is they used traditional coal, and almost everything was very smoky, which is why the oldest beers are things like porter, stouts, and browns, because it was really impossible to make a beer in the English fashion that didn't have that smokiness to it. This, however, should have a very light, malty taste to it, as well as a citrus taste. That citrus taste will balance the malt and cleanse the palate as you drink it. But what that comes from is that there are actually multiple ways to do it. That citrus comes from the esters in the yeast that we use, as well as the hops that we use. We use Cascades, which are American hop, but they have a very sweet taste to them. So those two things should combine. You should get a balance of mild maltiness and citrus instead of one. Anybody have any questions? You have to stop me because I used to do corporate events, not just talk.
So the pale ale is
English style.
there American styles?
There are American pale ales.
What's the slight difference between them at all?
So there are very strong differences actually. Americans, we have a tendency to amber coming up. So when you taste an American pale ale, a straight American pale ale is not that different. But a New England IPA or a West Coast IPA, what we do is we have a tendency to sort of reduce, right? So it's a marketing ploy to try to find a way to get your name on social media pages, get your name in beer trade magazines, right? So, but for the most part, the definitive American pale ale is made by a company called Anchor Brewing, which is super famous. They made Liberty Ale about 50 years ago, and it actually reinvented the style in the sense that it brought it back because it had faded even in English books until Anchor did it. And when Anchor made, one of the reasons we use Cascades is because Anchor used Cascades, and that's sort of we're very traditionalist brewers. We do have some funky stuff, but for the most part, all of our beers are food style, and most of them are really aged recipes. Any other questions?
Is that the same Anchor beer in Singapore?
Well, they're related. Yeah. So Anchor made some of the best beers on the planet, really. They took the California Common, which is an old style, and reinvented it and called it steam beer for a long time. That's I'm sorry for where it shows. So there were a couple of California brewers in the 70s that were really leading the way for it. Anchor was one of them, the other one was Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills made, to me, which is still the best beer name ever. They made her bitter. They named it alimony ale, the bitter spirit. Doesn't get any better than that.
So we're going to have some fun now. Tracy is going to draw a name of someone who put their card into the bucket, and we have a Czars Brewing hat, a t-shirt for those of you who want to be fashion forward, and a koozie. So the first winner is...
Anybody else? Make some output. No one knows what it
All right, we have a drawing for a second packet.
I love driving. Go Wendy. Fifth Mutry. I don't think so.
And one more Linda.
Scott Harrington.
Now, my mother always told me we should be thankful to people that help us out. The volunteers you see here tonight are all members of the board of the Historical Society, so would you join me in giving them a relative? Now, they each have a t-shirt. Now, I'm going to ask you a trivia question. I'm going to ask our servers to mix around the group and service. If you hear someone with the right answer, please feel free to give them a t-shirt. Are you ready for your trivia question? Okay, good luck. Servers, you can circulate. When you hear the right answer, you can distribute. Okay.
The right answer is.
Czars Brewery is centered on what street? Now Mark is going to regale us with another tale. We'll have a second for it, and then our next drawing is going to be for mobility, which I'll explain to you. So Mark, take it away.
First shocking revolution, right? The shock around the world, whatever called it. I'm retired about 4 years out here down in Massachusetts. Anybody remember the Battle of Nobody? However, if you understand the history, like I said, the history books that got it wrong. The actual first shot of the revolution was about right here in New Hampshire, and it all started with a bunch of guys drinking beer at a tavern. Now, that's really tavern. As you see right here, these are standing in downtown Portland on Daniel Street. The date is December 14, 1774, 4 months before the battles of Lexington and Concord. Guess who came riding into town? All over here, right? Not the midnight ride that you hear about the history book, the one that made it so famous. That came 4 months later. All Revere was a messenger sent out from Boston. Rides up to school with that night. A bunch of patriots in here drinking beer. Guess what Paul had to say? That the British were coming. What Paul Olsen said. Paul Revere was broken record, okay? And if the British were coming, you can count on that too to make sure you got the word out. He rides up to students. He said, yes, the British troops are on the move. They're coming up from Boston, coming up to reinforce Fort William and Maryland. Today we call that Port Constitution. It's out of Newcastle Island. It's part of the Pittsburgh Station today. The Elizabeth of Brewing is still standing. The British are coming up to reinforce this port. The patriots at Stoneleaf, they don't like hearing this information. They drink themselves brave, go marching out into the street, literally beating on a drum to muster up support. They round up 400 additional patriots. What do? They go and march on that fort. Now, the British didn't come. The British, granted, they needed those reinforcements that night. There were 5 soldiers on the fort. Plus the Captain Cochrane, that made 6. 400 drunken patriots are charging at him, okay? The British fire all 3 of their cannons. It doesn't stop the patriots. So they fire all 5 of their muskets. Doesn't stop the patriots. They go up and over that wall. They sack the fort, take the British hostage. Nobody was killed in this skirmish. You know the reason, you never hear much about it. But they take the British hostage and they run off with 100 barrels, each filled with 100 pounds of gunpowder. That was a lot back then. What do they do next? They do just what we would do. They go right back to school. They celebrate the victory. That day they come to another candidate to the ear to a job well done. Grip themselves brave one more time and said, let's go back and try that again, which is just what they did. Second day, they went after that fort again. This time they hauled away all the cannons and all the guns. All those weapons and all that gunpowder was later used against the British in the Battle of Bunker Hill and the Siege of Boston. So they had the first shot not heard around the world of the Revolution, but right here in the great state of New Hampshire, all started with a bunch of guys drinking beer at a tavern. Still tavern, you go looking for today in Daniel Street, you will not get acquainted. Back in the 1960s, in the name of urban renewal, which people often was, they tore it down. Where it stood today is the United Federal Building in Post Office. Right before they took it down, it served as a GE appliance shop, as you can see here. They had a little over the city. They understood that this was an important building. I took it down ward by ward, piece by piece, blocks away across town, put it back together. Today is probably strawberry right from June. But across the main entrance, you can get it there. But all of the things that wonderful things that happen to a bunch of people get together for you. Okay? When we turn back over to Czars, right back over here, bear number 2, I believe.
So what's circulating now is beer number 2, which is an ESB. So what that style is it's a multi-grain that's balanced against some hops. So what you should get is a very malty start with a dry hoppy finish. And this beer was developed by Fuller's, like I said, in the 1970s, and it was a multiple-time world champion. So not that we would steal the recipe or anything, but ours is better. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. And what it is to make sure, like I said, sweet malts and English hops. It's a traditional style, like I said before, that was originally formed in the 1600s, but it's changed many times.
Where are your hops from?
Most all of our hops that we purchase from the West Coast. Yeah. So we buy most of our hops out of Oregon or Washington. Because well, it's a couple of things. Right now, it's difficult to get anything that's not made in American soil grown in American soil. And the other thing is it's much more price controlled if you're buying it domestically. The cost of shipping now is just insane. I looked at a piece of equipment and they wanted $10,000 to ship it to me. It turned out it was coming from China. They wanted $10,000. Yeah, it's challenging. So we try to source everything as local as we can. We do buy some hops locally, but the problem is that when it comes to hops, the American Northwest now is the hop capital. That's the perfect climate for it. And a lot of the universities out there, like University of Washington, the University of Oregon, have put extensive research into hops varieties. So they're really good. Yeah, so there are different, each hop variety has a different level of bitterness to it. And it depends on a variety of cells has several things. It depends on whether they manipulate it at all, like we cross medium, whether it's a hybrid or not. And it also depends on how much sweet malt we have in the beer, because what's going to pass through depends on everything else that's there. So if you try like a traditional German Hefeweizen, there's almost no hops there, right? And you can take that same level of hops and put it in something that has really sweet malt and you can taste it. So it's all right. All right, who needs beer? Keep your hand up. Whoever said who wants
So when Tracy gave us our marching orders to take two. When Tracy gave us our marching orders to reinvent ourselves, one of the reasons we loved Henry was because he was so supportive of us and loved beer. But secondly, when you go in to the Czars brewery, on the wall are hundreds of names. Henry has started from nothing, and he's built himself a wonderful community. He has a community of people called the nobility. Tonight we're going to have a drawing for someone lucky enough to earn a free nobility, and I'll explain to you what it is. With the nobility, $85 for the year buys you all kinds of wonderful perks, free tours on your birthday, and more. That's right. And the fun part that I really like is you can choose a noble de plume. So on the wall are the names of all of the nobles, but they have chosen their own name. For example, my son Dominic is Viscount Pickles. My noble is Baron Good Tidings. So I can walk into the Czars Brewery and I can say, behold, I am here, Baron Good Tidings. So if you're lucky enough to earn a nobility tonight, then you can come up later and talk to Henry, and he can get all the details. Can you give him a few other examples of the benefits of a nobility?
Sure. So what it is for us, we're a community club, right? What happens for you? There's no television. There actually is a monitor by your place, a fireplace. There's no television in our place. The whole point is we want people to talk, to meet other people, and come and find a place where there's like a social club that happens to be very good people. Our nobility is part of that community, is what sustained us. And there are actually some people around the room who might stick their hands up and show that they're members of our noble club if you go around and see we have some here. Yeah. So it's our attempt to create a community in downtown Exeter and find a place where people can go and leave all the nonsense behind. There are really two rules in the club. There actually now it's going to be three, but there are two rules in the club. One is no politics, the other one is no religion, and then the third one, I won't say who, is no dares. The idea is a place where people can come and decompress and sit and laugh and talk, and it doesn't have to be a place where we debate politics, where we debate religion, or we do things that people are doing every day on the internet or town squares. So it's a decompressed place and a sense of community, and that's who we are. That's what we try to build. Luckily, we've made it through the last 2 years.
So what that has to do with us is that we decided that we were going to rebuild ourselves, and we wanted to be a community center for you. Not just a museum where we are curators of the past, which we are, and we're very proud of it, but as Tracy is quick to remind us, today will soon be tomorrow's yesterday. So in other words, you are history. And we want to give you a place where you can leave your story. That's why 10th generation Shelley Parrish is taking photos tonight and Bill Shura. We want to chronicle life today, because in 100 years, someone's going to come into this town and say, back in 2022, I had a family member, and can you tell me what life was like? And the people who are in our museum now, the ancient ones, had no idea that they were going to be on the wall. And you probably have no idea that you're going to be history over there one day, but you are. So we want to make sure that we're here to not only be a place where we can keep your story, but we also want to have more events like this during the year where we can all join together and have some fun as a community and not be as divided as it's easily to do. So if you enjoy yourself tonight, please let Tracy know and we'll plan more events. So we're going to have a drawing now for the nobility, and this is for a 1-year nobility, and you can talk to Henry at the end if you are the fortunate winner. Now, if you happen to have the nobility, if you're the winner, feel free to pass it on to a loved one or a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the nobility for 1 year. Russell Hilliard. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the big one. So this is a brew that was crafted just for us by Henry for our 300th anniversary. We feel very, very proud. So Henry, I'm going to have Mark regale us from the table, and then we'll distribute your 300th beer. Mark, take it away.
Thank you again. I could not come here tonight to talk about the history of the game. Sure, I'll talk about this guy right here, our hero, the king of all ale makers, Frank Jones. Right, Frank Jones was born in Barrington, New Hampshire. About halfway in the 20 years. Poor country boy, fed for 7 children. His job was to work the family farm. He had no formal education of any kind. He was walking in the park at the age of 7 he was barefoot, desperate. He got shooting the feet, so forth. Whitworth was older brother, who had a stove shop on Market Street. So Frank was a young stove salesman apprentice. Got a little money in his pocket. The guy he found out, his name was John Swindle, who owned a little beer brewery. He was a good beer brewer and a bad businessman. Frank found an opportunity there. He took what little money he had, he invested in that brewery. 2 years later, he bought it outright. That was the dawn of the Frank Jones Ale Brewery. It went on to become the largest ale brewery, not only in the country, but in the world. Running out an estimated 500,000 barrels of ale a year. A lot of beer by today's standards. He was doing this back in the 1800s. And to be pretty clear, I say ale. Frank Jones brewed ale. It's not all ale is beer. Not all beer is ale. There's a big difference. And Frank Jones brewed ale. There were other breweries in the country, but many names that brewed lager and such that were larger than Frank's ale brewery. He specifically had the largest ale brewery in the world at the time. That made New Hampshire the ale capital of the planet. Fantastic. Good times back in the old days. This section of the building here is long gone. If you're familiar with the west end of Portsmouth, the new apartment that they put in this building is still standing here. The much has gone down, but you can still see a good number of buildings outlying ones that still exist here today. Now, that brewery would make him one of the wealthiest men New Hampshire has ever known. And with money comes happiness, right? Yeah, and power. Frank did it all. He owned railroad companies, he was a banker, he owned hotels from here in Florida, and he got into politics. He got elected to Congress, moved down to Washington to serve out a term, came back, ran for governor, lost by you would think a man of this stature, a person of this stature, who did so much, he once paid 60% of all the property taxes in the city of Portsmouth. He owned that town. You would think there'd be a statue or a sign or something to recognize a man who had such impact. But nothing, very, very little. Even the old Frank Jones Conference Center got torn down and made way for new West End Yard, more apartments down there. Nowhere to look. You can find his legacy sprinkled all around New Hampshire. Here is his old home. Drive down Maplewood Avenue, heading west out of town toward Marshall Mall. We find this house on the left-hand side. Back shape at this point, but it still does stand. Frank's mansion, where we live with his wife Monica. It's no longer a mansion, of course, it's been divided up into apartments, but Maplewood Avenue, that name is its name from Maplewood Farm. which is what the name of the French estate was. If you drive down the South Cemetery in Portsmouth, you'll find these tombstones towering up in the sky at 29 feet tall. It was then, remaining today, the largest tombstone in the city of Portsmouth. Let the Freudian scholars figure out, huh? You know you're afforded. I told you give us hotels from here to Florida, right? Among them, the Rockingham Hotel, downtown Portsmouth, State Street, still standing. It's no longer a hotel. You can't stay there anymore. It's now condominiums. If you want to stay there, you have about 1.5 to 2 million, and you can stay in the Rockingham. If you don't want to stay there, you can still go inside down on the lower right-hand side. It's the library restaurant, folks. Very fine dining from 1972. Great place to stay. You don't go inside at all. You walk down State Street. Take a look at you. It's not right in the corner of the building. Oh, well, wait, so it's who's that right up there? Well, that's Frank Jones, huh? Carved in stone, looking down us for minions after all these years. And by the way, in the bed, in the hotel, this over here, on the left, that was the ladies' entrance to the hotel over here. The men's entrance, I'm sorry. The men's entrance was over here, the ladies' entrance was over here. It's no secret when playing touch that Frank's image got over the ladies' entrance, who can continue to look down at them after all these years by cat. Moving on, also, I mentioned here, Florida, Rockingham, not the only local place to get us. The other one was the Wentworth, of course, by the sea. I'm sure you've been out there before. This was looked like in the old days. When I was a kid, it was much, much larger before they did the renovation. Of course, it's still a hotel and all that. Frank Jones required to build that place. And the original owner had a smaller hotel on the site. He gives the Wentworth as we know it today. He also, the golf course came out there, built in Settlement now, the Wentworth Madison Country Club. Frank Jones never played golf. He knew nothing of the sport. He'd been in Europe. He'd seen it play. Came back here, put a golf course in, out of the Wentworth.
Yeah.
As soon as he did this, he realized not only that some people like to play this game, but other people like to stand around and watch it being played. Frank Jones built that clubhouse just to sell his beer to those people. Frank Jones married beer and golf together. Frank, here we go, Hampton Falls. Not a lot of talk about this. But straight to hell, letting you know. Frank was not a religious man. Lovely wife Martha, here she is, was a devout Baptist, however. See where I'm going with this one. Frank gave a whole lot of money to the church in Portland, the Baptist church in Portland, under Martin's insistence. There's a rumor going around, although I never found it in my actual research. Right here in Hampton Falls, you've got a one-time thing on planet Earth. Rumor has it, the Baptist church is down the street, we do renovations. Legend goes, and Frank, he's right with about Baptist, the renovation paid for at the top of the street. And if you go online on the interwebs, you will find that some websites are talking about roadside oddities and attractions have the gall to insist that on top of that church right here in the middle of Hampton Falls is a Frank Jones beer bottle. Right? The church, of course, definitely denies it. It's just a wood ornament, a fancy wood carving. Yes, it is. It happens to look a whole lot like a Frank Jones beer bottle. Good for you for having your claim to fame on the entire family. The only church, so they say, in the entire world with a beer bottle pointing straight up to heaven. And smoke a curtain to hell for that. Real drinking is beer. Frank Jones ale that made him so filthy rich, right? He also brewed a stout, the European import that was starting to come in. Here's my personal favorite. The other thing he brewed was a Frank Jones Golden Ale. It says right on the label, folks, special brewing for family use, huh? Hey, kids, come on inside and grab that first meeting, okay? This wasn't that long ago. And it was just what it was intended for. It had a level alcohol content like a Bud Light or a Miller Lite. And it was good for the whole family. Ah, good old days. All right, I believe we're up to number, is it three? Three.
Okay, so what we're going to serve now is Tricentennial water, which is a mock-up of, like I said before, the recipe that Robert Harry made in 1770, 1780, until 1790. It has traditional ingredients that would have been used at that time, like blackstrap molasses, black treacle, a few things I can't tell you, right, because I got to keep some secrets myself. But for the most part, it's brewed with ingredients that were available and used during the late 18th century. Hopefully you like it. Anyone have any questions while I might come up?
If I guess the ingredients, would you say yes or no?
I might wink at you or something like that.
Okay, and if other people guess too, if I really guess, yes,
Yeah, no, I would tell you.
all right, and what about,
There's no pumpkin in this particular recipe.
So
Although
other
pumpkin
squash.
was used quite often.
So other
No, there's no
squash.
squash. No squash nor pumpkin. There might be a touch of thyme.
how do you get them? Like, how do you get edible time?
So that's not the answer to the question.
All right. Is it like maple syrup or like?
There is some maple syrup, and there's black treacle, there's black molasses. And what the reason for that is those were all commonly available sweeteners at the time. And what we do in the process, I described earlier about how the melting process.
Frank Jones's wife, she went to
So what happens
Eldridge,
when
Eldridge
great
Brewing.
and small things,
He owned Eldridge,
what happens
BBC,
is
he owned
starches
Eldridge.
are all sugar into sugars. And then those sugars in the
Yeah,
master
he
process
owned that too.
are converted into a kind of sugar. And then these things are mashed. So the sugars that you just all described were commonly available to those people at the time. So they use what they could get.
So if I wanted to take that, how would I do it?
Make this particular
Like an old tiny original. And that's how would they do it?
Well, they made it the same way we make it actually. It's just that our systems is different. But it's made very similar to how the home brew where they use it.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And
I
it's just a
buy
matter
and sell.
of, it's almost
I'm an
alchemy
auctioneer.
in the sense that there's chemistry
Yeah, well,
involved.
Frank
There's also
Jones. I used to sell all the rest of the
some ingredients in how you make certain flavors by putting a number of ingredients together with each one of them. So it's a matter of reducing the esters that your taste buds will associate with whatever dish.
Very good, thank
There's a slight bit of pine. It is. Very good. You're a natural cicerone. Not many people are saying that out. That's very good. Yes, it's a little bit of it is a touch of it. And the whole point is to balance it. You use a lot of different
You try to people to know. Or postcards. You should take the Frank Jones approach to it.
depending on how your palate is tested. Everybody's going to get slightly different. There is some coffee to it there. There's coffee and toffee. That comes from there's a grain, an English grain called special bean, which will give you a little bit of coffee, a little bit of toffee, and a little bit of plum. And we use that in this. It's the breakfast of champions.
Like right near the Frank Jones house.
We have some lovely party gifts for all of you, so I'll explain. Each of you, on your way out, can stop at the first door here, and you each get a official Czars t-shirt. We had ordered the t-shirts in July, and we had to estimate the number of people and the sizes. It was a bit of physics for us. We did the best we can. So as you get your glass and your t-shirt, if you tell them your t-shirt size, we'll do our very best to get it as close to your size as possible. They are cotton. You can go up a size if we don't have your size, you can up the size, or you can go down the size and give it to a friend or one of those exists. The other thing you get is a collectible Tricentennial glass. These are called flagons in the olden days, so you each get a flagon. Now these puppies are collectible. They do not do well in dishwashers, so please hand wash them and put them somewhere special because these will be treasured items. Now, in your flagon, you will get, because we're continuing the party, in your flagon you will get a 10% coupon. This is 10% off the Hampton Falls official brew 4-pack. Here's how it works. 10% off Hampton Falls 4-pack at the Czars Brewing. This coupon is good tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. I would suggest save it till Saturday, and here's why. To end up this wonderful week, Henry is opening his lovely establishment for us. And at 4 o'clock on Saturday, we're having an official Falls 4 o'clock flagon fest. Now, if you can turn to your neighbor and quickly say 3 times, Falls 4 o'clock flagon fest, and you're doing really well. Already Saturday. Now, also tonight, in addition to your lovely party gift, we're having a coronation. There's a man in this room who has worked over 3 years to make sure that this week was spectacular. He's done a really wonderful job. And so we're here to have Henry help us with the coronation. And Beatty, would you please come up? Give Ed the official crown of the Czars Brewing.
Goes to the sideways. Normally I use the sword to guide people, but I figured tonight a sword wouldn't be a good
It doesn't
choice.
work yet.
Now, stay right there. If you come just before 4 o'clock on Saturday for the Falls 4 o'clock flagon fest, we will have something special for you so we can welcome Ed as we give him a lovely toast. And that is... Bring your 10% coupon for your flagon fest on Saturday. We'll have ad heads for and it'll be our last chance to celebrate this wonderful 300. We have truly enjoyed it. Could we give a rousing huzzah to the band? Our special guests, Mark and the Czar. Give it up.
I just want to take a moment, it's very wrong, is it? Yeah. I want to take a moment to recognize someone who has contributed so much to this evening. And it's had to happen since we And our trustees have certainly worked very, very hard to acknowledge them. But it is this man, Warren, who has put his heart and soul and mind into this whole movement. It was he who initiated this idea and followed it through week after week. It's incredible how he played. So I want to say the Warren. Maybe I should come tonight. It's a warm night, a busy summer night, and we were grateful that you would support the Historical Society. And I only encourage you to use your email to become members of the Historical Society because we have a lot going on. And right now, there's been a change right now. It's easy to die that we have 3 major exhibits. The Brown Film exhibit, which is part of the Kelly Parrish's movement, and she has worked so hard on that. It's worth the price of admission to see that. And then we have another wonderful display from Salt Marsh Day, and another on John Stavish's Cuba. And we couldn't come up to the world. They're state of the art, and probably in the museum, because we have invested in materials that really highlight what we're trying to share. So do come by and visit us.
As you exit tonight, you get your flag and your t-shirt. We have wonderful tricentennial items on the table for sale. We even have the 3rd volume of the Hampton Falls history. And so I also want to remind you that Friday night, right here, is Marianne Esposito. She holds the record for the longest running cooking show on television. She will be taking us through a wine tasting of 3 regions of Italy. And on Saturday at noon, we have Lana's Tales. And don't forget the 4 o'clock calls. Now you're free to have beer.
So, is this where like the U-Haul is? If on West Side River, it's like the U-Haul. Yeah, like where the apartments are. That's